On the first evening of the new year, a 747 just took off from Bombay with 190 passengers, but just after a few minutes, it was diving right into the sea. Never did they know that this New Year's Eve was their last. It crashed into the Arabian Sea, killing everyone on board. What do you think happened to the Queen of the Skies that it crashed just within minutes of the departure? This is a story of confusion. This is the sad story of Air India Flight 855 and the story of the India's deadliest air crash till 1996. Let's find out what happened. It was the evening of a New Year's Day in 1978 when Air India Boeing 747-200 was scheduled to perform a flight between Bombay Sahar Airport, which is currently renamed as Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport, en route to Dubai International Airport. The Boeing 747 was named Emperor Ashoka. It was almost 7 years old and it was the first 747 delivered to Air India. It was dark and the Queen of the Skies was parked at the gate. The flight crew details are the following. After the passengers were on board, the 747 moved towards the runway and the journey began at approximately 8:40 p.m. Indian local time, after sunset with no severe weather conditions. The aircraft successfully took off from the airport. About 1 minute into the flight, the 747 took a right turn towards the Arabian Sea, setting the heading and following the attitude indicator. Now let's pause here for a second. Pilots use an attitude indicator to identify the bank angle and the direction of the turn. The attitude indicator is one of the most important flight instruments that inform pilots about the exact attitude of the aircraft and gives an immediate indication of the smallest orientation change. The 747 had 3 attitude indicators in total, one on the captain's side, second on the FO's side, and the third in the middle of the cockpit, which has a separate power source. As they performed the right turn and leveled off, here's when the problem started. Captain Kukar was the first to notice the problem when he said, "What happened to my instruments?" The captain was explaining that his AI had toppled, meaning that it was still showing that the aircraft was in a right bank even though it wasn't. First Officer Virmani, his functional AI was now showing a left bank, and not noticing the captain's concern, he said, "Mine has also toppled, it looks fine." It's believed that the captain mistakenly took this to mean that both the primary AIs were indicating a right bank. It was after sunset and it was dark and cloudy, and the aircraft was flying over the dark Arabian Sea, leaving the crew unable to visually cross-check their AI instrument readings with the actual horizon outside the cockpit windows. So with the captain believing that his aircraft is turning to the right, the captain started to turn the aircraft to the left using left aileron and left rudder. The first officer's functioning AI now showed the jet turning to the left, while the captain's AI froze on the right bank indication. The first officer noticed that the captain's AI may have been showing faulty information. It was confusing for the first officer, so he must have thought that his indicator was also showing incorrect data. So what happens in a turn is, as you turn left, you require a bit of back pressure to keep the attitude level. And if there's no back pressure, the plane just starts to pitch down, and that's what happened. By now, the 747 was in a 60-degree bank and was losing lift, diving towards the sea. The crew were really confused of what was happening. Air India 855 was running out of time, as they just took off and they didn't have enough time for recovery and altitude as well. If this situation was at a cruising altitude, it would have been different, as they would have more time and altitude to recover from the situation. The pilots had lost situation awareness and they were spatially disorientated. Flight engineer Faria was telling the captain, "Don't go by that one, don't go by that one." He was trying to direct the captain's attention towards the third attitude indicator. Just 5 seconds before the aircraft impacted the sea, the captain pushed the 747 further towards the left with a bank angle of 108 degrees, causing the plane to drop quickly like a brick just after 101 seconds of takeoff. The aircraft crashed into the Arabian Sea at an approximate angle of 35 degrees, taking the life of all 190 passengers and 20 crew members. After the crash, rescuers searched the sea with the expectation of finding survivors. Unfortunately, no one was found. They tried to locate the flight data recorder that had crucial information that could clarify the origin of the accident. After the investigation, the primary cause of the crash was attributed to a malfunctioned attitude indicator, as well as the flight crew's loss of situation awareness. The families of the victims of the 1978 Air India crash filed a lawsuit against Boeing. During the investigation, it was also found that Captain Kukar was diabetic, and he was flying illegally under the influence of diabetic drugs, a condition compounded by his alcoholic intake and dieting in the 24 hours before the flight. Final conclusion that caused the crash was due to irrational control inputs by the captain following the complete unawareness of the attitude in his attitude indicator. Also, the crew failed to gain control based on other flight instruments as well. After that, the case filed by the families of the victims was dismissed.